Hi everybody, sorry that I'm not able to join you for the meeting. I hope you have a fruitful meeting. I'm Kit Chen, one of the teacher for Yes. I teach class of primary English and co-teach with Susie and also Cherry. Okay, Carol has asked me to kind of share with you my PowerPoint and the content of Cycle 11. Teaching students with SEN. My background is I have been teaching students with SEN for many years, so I suppose this is the reason why Carol wanted me to share with you. Okay, first of all, look at the lesson plan that I have done last year. In the lesson plan, there are lots of links that I have embedded in. So with the link, you can actually have reference to a lot more information. I have also included quite a wide range of activities and also readings for tutors and also for students. The key idea for Cycle 11 is we want to have three main things. First of all, talk about the prevalence and also the SEN categories in Hong Kong. Then second, the whole school approach that the EDB has adopted for more than 10 years, and also the three-tier system. Full-time students may not have heard about the whole school approach and the three-tier systems. You might need to talk a little bit more about that. But part-time students, most of them will know about the three-tier systems and the whole school approach. The reading one has also included the whole school approach, which is quite a long document. However, very easy to read. Please be assured the students about that. And then the third part, which is the learning characteristics of three most prevalent types of SEN, is the major part of the content of these two lessons. Out of all the 8 categories, I have chosen mainly autism, ADHD, and specific learning difficulties to talk about. The reasons for that is because these are the major categories that students will find in mainstream schools, and they find these students most difficult to work with, in particular, students with ADHD and ASD. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this as well. Okay. Readings. Students have 2 readings to do. As mentioned before, the first one is the operation guide on the whole school approach. And the second one is a very brief summary of various diagnoses that I have prepared for students. Because if we need to look at all diagnosis information, it will be too much for students. So I've done a summary for them. But I do want to raise one point that for the diagnosis of the 3 that I have included, namely autism, ADHD, and specific learning difficulties, they are the diagnosis definition of DSM-5. DSM is Diagnostic Statistical Manual. While the terminologies that you're very familiar with, like Asperger's syndrome, dyslexia, are all from DSM-4. So students may get confused about that, and you might want to clarify the differences between DSM-5 and DSM-4. Okay, have a look at the link that I have provided and the notes, and you will understand much better. Okay. So these are the lists for teachers. I deliberately chose some checklists and also some simple, easy to read practice guides for teachers, including dyslexia, math, and also a little bit of general information about teaching students with SEN. They are not that difficult to read, only several pages for each one. So enjoy your weekend reading yourself as well. Right, okay, so this lesson starts with general definition about SEN, what is the definition in Hong Kong, and then moving on to the 8 categories of SEN. There is recently a new category that has included as well. Basically, the 8 categories are ADHD, autism, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, physical disability, blah, 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 as you can see. However, as I have said earlier, these categories cover quite a wide range, and specific learning difficulties, ASD and ADHD, are the 3 main ones that students will encounter in mainstream school. Even though intellectual disability, the middle one, also has a high prevalence, however, they will a lot of them will be studying in special school, not in mainstream school. Okay, so that needs to be clarified again. And out of all those, specific learning difficulties are the ones that has the highest prevalence in mainstream schools. But you can see that with the number, there is not a huge increase in specific learning difficulties, but there is a huge increase, almost double and even triple, in the figure of ASD and ADHD. And this trend is expected to continue, meaning in mainstream schools, especially in secondary schools, teachers are facing more and more students with ASD and ADHD. So that needs to be spelled out as well. After knowing about the whole school approach, students will want to know about the three-tier intervention model, which originated from the US. And Hong Kong EDB has adopted this model for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Basically, the concept is Tier 1 are for students who can learn pretty well in regular classroom, and they will require minimum support, while Tier 2 students need to have add-on services to them. Some schools may have pull-out services or pull-out lessons for these students during important major subject lessons like math or English or Chinese, while Tier 3 are students who require even more additional support, sometimes even individual support in the classroom or in a pull-out situation. The main thing that I actually emphasize quite a lot is the difference between Tier 2 and Tier 3, because these will have the funding given by the EDB, while Tier 1 students doesn't have any funding from the EDB. And educational psychologists are the ones who define who are at Tier 2 or who are at Tier 3. Okay, right. So moving on, you might actually want to let students know that the government has established a school partnership scheme that some ordinary schools and special schools who have done really well in special education are within this partnership scheme, that schools can approach them and get some professional advice or sometimes even professional development training for them. So this is a good resources to have. Okay, moving on to the free diagnosis. I do want to talk a little bit about ASD because quite a lot of teachers have misunderstanding about these children, and as a result, there have been behavioral issues that it could have been avoided if they know or understand these children better. Okay, basically there are 8 differences in terms of ASD students' learning characteristics compared to their peers. And within the lessons of 2 hours, there is no way that we can cover all these differences. So the main thing that teachers may want to know is about the cognitive differences and also their behavior. Okay. So in terms of cognitive differences, this slide basically is a summary of what are the cognitive differences. They might have uneven profile in their cognitive ability, meaning that they might be excellent in remembering the multiplication timetable, but unable to actually apply it in daily life, or their Chinese may be extremely poor in communication, in comprehension, but they might be able to recognize a lot of vocabularies and remember how to write them. Okay. Their generalization ability is also quite weak. Sometimes they learn, but they may not understand what they have learned. So as a result, when it comes to exams time, then they will not be able to generalize the skills that they have learned into exam paper. Okay. Reasons for that could be related to their theory of mind, which they don't understand other people's feelings, and also their weaker executive functioning, including their working memory and also their short-term memory, other aspects as well. Okay, so these are the things that I'm sure you already know, including the theory of central coherence, meaning they only look at the details, but they cannot see the bigger picture. Say, for example, in the recent liberal studies exam, that when they look at a picture of a cartoon, They may be looking at the details of the cartoon, but cannot understand what does the cartoon actually presenting. As a result, they will find it very difficult to analyze the question, and they usually cannot do well in the liberal studies in DSE. So, I suppose you should be very familiar with all this, but regarding the sensory needs, this is an area that quite a lot of teachers do not understand, and I want to spend a little bit of time on that. Autistic children have very strong sensory needs, meaning they might be very sensitive to the sound, to the light, to things that are turning, or they might be doing a lot of self-stimulatory behavior, even in the mainstream, in order to give themselves some sensation. Okay. This very often can be the trigger for their behavioral problems. Say, for example, the classroom is too noisy, they cannot stand it. So they may want to avoid the noisy classroom environment, or they might want to withdraw from it. And without teachers' understanding, they may think, oh, you are trying to avoid the task because you don't want to do it, or because you are attention seeking. Please try to understand that sometimes it's not because of these, it's in fact because of the sensory needs. So it's very difficult to explain it in details within 1 or 2 minutes, but I do want to raise the fact that sensory needs is one major problem of children with ASD. Okay, next one, students with ADHD. This one, I think teachers are more familiar with because they see them and they have behavioral issues, hyperactivity, and things like that. In the DSM-5, these are the definitions, symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Okay, there are basically 3 types of children with ADHD. One is only attention deficits, ADD. One type is only hyperactivity and impulsivity, and the last type is the mixed ADHD. But the last type with the mixed ADHD has the highest population within the category. Okay, and the problem for these children is they find it difficult to concentrate. And when we talk about the difficulty in concentration, it's not only talking about ability to concentrate on a task, but also ability to focus for a longer duration compared to their peers, and their ability to sustain on a particular task without shifting their attention to something else. Say, for example, if I'm talking and someone walks past by, I may be distracted by that person, and after that, it took me a long time to come back to focus on what I should be doing. So students with ADHD has different types of attention issues as well. And as a result, their organization ability is being affected. They have executive functioning problems, and because of their impulsivity and hyperactivity, they find it difficult to self-regulate themselves. So when they want to shout out the answer, they just shout out without thinking, oh, if I shout out, my teacher will be very cross with me. I better keep quiet. They don't. They just shout out without thinking about the consequence. And that gets on your nerves, of course. Okay, coming to the last one, specific learning difficulties and dyslexia. There are different terminologies that people might have heard of. The very common one is dyslexia. In Chinese is 读写障碍, and then dyscalculia, dysgraphia. And with the DSM-5, these terminologies are being changed to specific learning difficulties in reading, in writing, in math, etc. Basically, this slide just sums up what are their learning characteristics. Okay, among students with specific learning difficulties, about 80% of them actually have dyslexia. So you can concentrate more talking about dyslexia rather than the other two. Okay, and the information processing model explains why children with dyslexia have issues in reading and also in understanding some of the things. Again, it has lots of information in the lesson plan, and you can also do some search on the internet. I have prepared an exercise that looks like this in the lesson plan for students to actually experience that they work in pairs and to try to read it out the passages, how difficult it is for them to simulate what it is like for children with dyslexia to read. So it would be good fun exercise for them. And coming to almost the last, for dyslexia, when we talk about the information processing model, we're talking about two processes. One could be a visual process, one could be a phonological process. Phonological process particularly affects students who are reading English because they rely on phonics to help them. And if they have the processing problem, it does affect them to how to sound out the word and how to blend the words together, while visual processing will affect both students reading English and also reading Chinese. Okay, last, when students are attending the DSE, I think teachers need to aware that with professionals' assessment, by educational psychologists or occupational therapists, students actually get some extension of time, up to like 40% of extension of time when they go to DSE. And there are some adaptation in terms of exam procedure as well. Say, for example, the student can sit in a quieter room by themselves without so much disturbance during the exam, instead of sitting in a big hall. Or there are specific software that the students read to the computer and it will be changed to text. Or students with autism, I mentioned earlier, when they attend the liberal studies exam, then there will be a script explaining what the cartoon actually is presenting, so that it helps them to understand better. So, very pleased that EDB and also the society is understanding more about the needs, and adjustment has been made as a result. Thank you. Enjoy your teaching.